Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of MMA Vision Analysis. This one, I'm here to talk about September 14th, the interesting date. It's interesting because that's the night that UFC 306 happens, I believe, at the Sphere. Main event, Sugar O'Malley versus Mir Abdulashvili for that bantamweight title. Fantastic fight, but coincidentally, this will be the same night that Canelo Alvarez entered the boxing ring. I'm going to talk about Canelo Alvarez's recent comments in regards to this specific subject. But before I get started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification to get all of this that is new from this channel, your channel, the one and only MMA Vision Analysis. Canelo Alvarez, undoubtedly, perhaps at this moment, Canelo Alvarez is the biggest name in boxing, dare I say, especially taking into consideration that Tyson Fury was defeated in the last time around against Alexander Usyk. Obviously, you know, many other names can be brought up in this category, but I think, it's fair to say that Canelo Alvarez is in a sphere of his own. He is levels beyond the closest competitor. My personal opinion, there's reasons why I say. I'm a huge fan of Canelo, and if you're a fan of combat sports, you have to understand that, and you do understand and appreciate the fact that Canelo Alvarez, one of the greatest boxers, not only of this generation, but arguably of all time. Canelo Alvarez, phenomenal fighter. I love watching Canelo Alvarez fight, which brings me to the point of this video. Now, we have obviously the highly anticipated UFC 306, the one that's going to be going down at the Sphere. Main event, Sugar O'Malley versus Mir Abdulashvili for that bantamweight title. Co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grosso for the third time. Actually, very interesting fight as well. So, big UFC card the night of UFC 306, undoubtedly. And this will be one of those nights where the event is probably going to stretch, depends on where you're in the States you are, depending on East Coast, West Coast. It's gonna stretch. So what I'm trying to say is that this will coincide with the Canelo Alvarez, boxing fight that's gonna happen towards the end of the night. I mean, more than likely, I would assume all UFC fans do the same thing. I mean, I don't know how people try to differentiate MMA fans from boxing fans. I believe lovers of combat sports are just that, lovers of combat sports. There are things you may tune into, things you may not so much tune into. But when it comes to boxing, we are talking about the sweet science. Everybody loves boxing. I don't have any shadow of a doubt in my mind that all MMA fans have at least respect for boxing. At the end of the day, Western boxing is perhaps the most impactful weapon in mixed martial arts, though it's not the only one. I think most MMA fans will look at boxing as a specific rules of combat. Obviously, only hands. It's a very, very, very specific way of fighting. But if you watch an MMA fight, there's just more dimension to a fight. And I believe pure fighting fans are going to appreciate that more. The fact that there's more that can be done to finish fights, therefore creating more interesting, captivating, not only fights, but main events and back-to-back main events and back-to-back fights and even prelims and small fight cards. I don't even know at this point if there's any such thing as a small fighting card, because anytime you tune in, especially to a UFC event, you're almost promised entertainment. Unfortunately, the same thing cannot be said about boxing. obviously. Excluding big names like Canelo Alvarez, obviously. When Canelo fights, okay, Canelo is like a world of his own. Really, he's Canelo Alvarez. It's a brand of his own, like Manny Pacquiao was a brand of his own, and Floyd Mayweather was a brand of his own, and Muhammad Ali was modern day. I know there's the Errol Spencers, we have the Gervonta Davis, we have the you go on the list, but Canelo Alvarez is certainly one of those guys that is up there in terms of star power. Obviously has the whole country of Mexico behind him when he fights. I'm not sure who he thinks his demographic is. It's very difficult for me to digest these statements from Canelo Alvarez. He thinks that the UFC is basically no competition, and he doesn't think that somebody who's going to tune in to watch him fight is going to tune into that UFC night. Unfortunately, what I'm about to say, I think, is the case for most people. And just because most main events that do happen on, let's say on a Saturday for boxing, usually I think the delay is done on purpose, but it's delayed just so the UFC event can end, and then most MMA fans, I would assume, would go on to go and watch the main boxing fight that's happening said night, right? But this UFC fight card is going to be one of those cards that's going to stretch for a very long time, and it will coincide with Canelo Alvarez fight. Probably not going to end until probably like the 5th or 6th round in Canelo Alvarez fight, which could also mean that there is a majority of MMA fans that could miss this fight. It seems like the Canelo really doesn't care much, but I don't know how he wouldn't care, because, as I said, the fans of boxing are the same fans as the MMA fan. I don't think there's really a difference. They're just lovers of combat sports. And the rigidness of boxing, I believe, is, and the lack of, let's say, there's just one way of doing things in boxing, and pretty much it's that way or the highway. You can't do that. I mean, if there's a UFC event, just, I don't know if it was possible to delay another week and have the fight the week after. I do understand that some people may come up with reasons why, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's Canelo Alvarez losing money, because a person like myself, I'm certainly going to be tuned into UFC 306, and that's going to be the case all the way until the end of that fight night, which is probably going to take away the opportunity for me to watch Canelo Alvarez fight, which I don't understand. I think, just because we're talking about boxing and MMA, it's all combat sports. We're talking about pretty much, there's crossover fans. I like MMA. Doesn't mean just because I like MMA, I'm not going to like boxing. Every time Tyson Fury, Gervonta Davis, Canelo Alvarez fight, I have to tune in. And unfortunately, with the timing looking the way it is, I just don't see how that's fair to combat sports lovers, because we want to capture it all at the end of the day. But I really think it's going to take a huge share of the pay-per-view sales for that fight. Just personal opinion, and also taking into consideration that Canelo Alvarez, with no disrespect to the boxers, some of the toughest people on planet Earth, but it's hard to tune in with these storylines. It really is. I mean, yes, we know Canelo. Yes, we know Floyd. But those are like a handful of guys throughout the past 20 years that you know about and you follow along. Everybody else is serve as a filler pretty much at times. With no disrespect to Canelo's opponent, but I'm just simply not going to be tuned into that fight as long as UFC 306 still, if they coincide. Of course, UFC 306 is going to be a priority for me. And that's going to be unfortunate for the pay-per-view sales of Canelo, because I think a lot of people will agree, because the entertainment that you get from watching a UFC event far outweighs the entertainment that you get from watching a boxing event, with an exclusion of some fights, and sometimes not the whole fight, some rounds of some fights. So that's just the truth. If you made it this far, I appreciate you for sticking around. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and like, subscribe for more.